Have you set a big New Year's goal only to feel the excitement fizzle out by the end of January? Well, you're not alone. Here's the thing. What motivated you in your 20s or even last year might not work for you anymore. And that's not failure. It's normal. In this episode, we're breaking down why motivation shifts as life changes, how misaligned goals could keep you stuck, and why your New Year's resolution might have already felt impossible. But here's the twist. It is not too late to realign. In fact, this could be your biggest opportunity to focus on what truly inspires you and create goals that actually work. If you've ever felt stuck, unmotivated, or your drive just disappeared, this episode is your wake-up call. Trust me, you're going to want to hear this. This is the Pursue Your Spark podcast, and I am Heike Yates. If you're feeling stuck in midlife, wondering, how did I get here? You're in the right place. We're all about real transformation, not quick fixes. My mission is to help you break free from limiting beliefs and outdated habits using fitness and wellness as tools for change. Each episode offers practical strategies for turning complex challenges into simple, actionable steps. So bring your yes, I can attitude and earbuds, and let's explore how you can truly thrive in midlife. Feeling stuck and unmotivated isn't just something we face at the start of the year. It can happen at any time and at any stage in life. I know because I've been there. If you've been listening to me for a while, you know my story, how I went from single mom with 2 kids, ages 4 and 7, to start building my fitness business. And at some point, when I started building my fitness business, I only had $300 that I earned teaching fitness classes. And I made this big audacious goal that I get a divorce, that I didn't think about it, that I can do this. And I rented myself a little townhouse and moved in with my kids and started building my fitness career. And there was a lot of times when I just had to bite the bullet and take the kids with me to work and figure out how I can teach more classes to make more money. And eventually I got hired as a fitness coordinator at a club locally here. And I had insurance and I could bring my kids with me to work. And they were in what's back then called child care, both of them. And I'm sure after a couple of years, they didn't like going anymore, but I had no choice. And I wanted to move forward and I wanted to provide for all of us a good life. And my son sometimes says, Mom, we had so little money and you worked so hard. And I remember we never went on vacation because we didn't have money. But how did you make it all work? And we were still happy. We had still great food. And yes, I made a lot of lasagna because that fed a lot of hungry mouths throughout the week. But I just was focused. I was determined. And I kept changing to what we needed to do or I needed to do to make it happen. So I wasn't super motivated. That's not true. I was super motivated to make a living for us. That's really, but I did feel stuck. And when this episode airs, we're not too far away from New Year's, and researchers suggest that only 9% of Americans who make resolutions complete them. In fact, research also shows that 23% of people quit their resolutions by the end of the first week, and 43 quitted by the end of January, according to a study of the Ohio State University. That's a lot of quitting. And I think a lot of us go into the new year saying, I can do this, I have a goal. And that is great. And that's why we're talking about today, why losing motivation may not be your fault. And so as I kept digging around more, learning about myself, motivation, why we get motivated, why we're losing motivation. And just a heads up, We're losing motivation for no apparent reason sometimes. And so I came across a lifespan model of motivation. It's called the lifespan model of motivation. And it helps us understand that our drive, our motivation, naturally shifts as life changes. Think about it. What exactly or excited you in your 20s, like building a career or starting a family, might not resonate with you now. And that's okay. Life transitions bring new priorities and motivation evolves to fit them. Understanding this isn't about fixing yourself. It's about recognizing growth and giving yourself permission to focus on exactly what truly matters today. So when you think about the goals that you set for the new year, and most people want to lose weight, and I want people to get away from wanting to lose weight in the new year and going on drastic diets and over-exercise. You only overate for the holidays. If you just go back to your healthy habits and do that consistently, you don't have to go on the diet and you don't have to set big audacious goals for the new year that you are not following through on and which makes you more frustrated. So as we break that down for the new year, think about your goals. And I also want to go into the lifespan model with some examples. So let's look at our life stages. And again, I keep saying that motivation isn't static. Once you're motivated about something, it's not going to stay that way. It comes and it goes. It changes as life throws us new challenges and opportunities that way. And let's look at how it evolves with some examples and why it matters. Now, I don't know what you did in your 20s and 30s. I know what I did. I moved to the United States to work for the Foreign Service. And then I met my first husband. And I had my first son with 27 and my daughter when I was 30. So I had a ton of things I had to figure out. Going to a new country, working at a new job, getting better at speaking English. I had British English, but I wasn't really fluent. And I remember when my first time, I had moved here, I lived in a hotel until I found my apartment in Georgetown. And I went to the grocery store and I stood in line at all my items and the lady said something to me. I looked at her. I had no idea what she was talking about until I figured she's asked me if I want to pay cash or credit. But I had learned British English and American slang was not something that I was familiar with. Now, if you put yourself in those 20 to 30s, imagine what it is that you achieved, what you were working on, and how you felt about your careers, your relationships, and your finances, and whether you figured them out or not. And we may have constantly compared ourselves to our friends who at that point were more successful. I mean, I was emulating being a good mom. I was watching all the other moms. So I try to be a good mom, whatever that means, because I think we always are good moms. We sometimes are more dedicated than other times, and sometimes we do a better job than other times, but that's with everything. So when you look at what you did in your 20s and 30s, I am sure you can relate to motivation not always being high and not always being gung-ho and not always really being committed to something that you wanted to do, that you had thought of wanting to do. I mean, there's so many examples I can think of. One of my examples was I started running. Well, it only lasted for 2 runs because I had no idea how to do running and I tried to figure it out. And in that case, I gave up until many years later. So in our 20s and 30s, we are experimenting and we're learning. Learning is the key to finding what works for us or what lights us up. Now, let's shift to midlife between our 40s and 60s. And in our 40s and 60s, again, we're going through a lot of different things in our lives. So we're starting usually with having a family, building a career, going through menopause. And then in our 60s, we're probably starting to downregulate all the things that we have worked for at this point. And maybe we're becoming grandparents. And also at this time, we are becoming oftentimes caregivers. So the feeling we have may be the feeling of stuck. And feeling of stuck is a sign to reassess and not a sign of failure, in my opinion. So you're reassessing your exercise when you're in menopause. Can I really bang out those hard workouts after I've not been sleeping all night? Can I commit an hour a day to my exercise program, knowing full well that I have to take care of my aging parents. I need to do errands for them. So it really feels overwhelming. And sometimes we feel so stuck in this part of life, so stuck of what should we do for ourselves? How do we set boundaries? And how do we keep up our energy? And that is something that many women grapple in this life. And we're setting those big, amazing goals. We're changing around our nutrition completely. And maybe we started intermittent fasting, but we started out with ginormous fasts, with 20-hour fasts, day-long fasts. And that backfired on us. But think about it where you are right now. Yes, you, the listener. You maybe feel like you're pulled in 100 different directions if you're a mom, or even if you're a mom whose kids are grown and maybe you're a grandma like I am and you take care of your aging parents and you still have a job. So when we're looking at this phase, motivation takes a big hit, physically as well as mentally. So this is a good time where we start to realign our goals to reflect our current values. And this can be life-changing. What is important now in our midlife is very different than it was in our 20s. Now, let's talk about later in life, like 70s and beyond, where many of us have maybe quit our job. Kids are grown. We may have grandkids or not. We are now traveling more, so we have more money, more freedom to travel and to explore the world. But we're looking for a purpose, because when you think about it, I am thinking, okay, you heard it here first. Maybe I told you already, but I don't know. My husband and I are thinking of retiring in Portugal. Why Portugal? We visited last year and we loved it. So on our past visit with my son and our granddaughter and his family, we picked a town that we might consider to retire. So we looked at properties, we looked at the town, and we looked at also what would we do when we move there. I mean, I could keep podcasting, Pursue Your Spark is an online program, so I can continue doing this, but we would leave our friends behind. And would that be really what we want? And, what would be our clear purpose when we do that? We're no longer going to work as in 9 to 5 like my husband does. But how do we find fulfillment as we keep moving on? And so we are looking at a very different way of motivation, different environments that motivate us. And also, as we're now going past the 60s and 70s, our exercise focus is going to definitely change from banging out hard workouts to more workouts that are kinder to the body, that are easy on the joints, that we love doing, that don't leave us exhausted. May I mention Pilates? And that is something that we need to think about when we're thinking about our motivation in our 70s and beyond. Adapting and also celebrating our wisdom keeps us motivated and connected. So think about it. What age group are you in, you, the listener, that you can relate to, that resonates with you? And in your mind, you could go through and say, hey, yeah, this is where I feel stuck. Yeah, That's not what I'm motivated. Should I let go of this? And we'll dive a little bit more into all of this. Hey, Taike, do you ever feel like life is so busy that taking care of yourself falls to the bottom of the list? My client Maria knows exactly how that felt. Maria is 62. She is a lawyer who could never find time for herself. Between her demanding job and caring for her elderly parents, exercise and healthy eating often took a backseat. She had always been intrigued by intermittent fasting, but worried about fitting it into her busy life. With the Fasted and Fit Over 50 Jumpstart, Maria found the perfect introduction to a healthier lifestyle. And the 15-minute Pilates sessions were easy to fit into her day, and the fasting schedule was flexible enough for her busy work hours. By the end of the course, Maria felt more focused and less bloated, ready to continue her new habits. If you see yourself in Maria's story and want to try the course, check the link in the show notes to get started. You know, as we're looking for our motivation, literally high and low and everywhere, something comes to mind to me, and that's common traps that hinder our motivation. And I have 3 traps in mind, and we'll talk a little bit about those because sometimes we don't even think about that. This could be why we're losing motivation. Number 1 is the comparison trap. Like, for instance, comparing yourself to your younger self or others only distracts us from what matters now. How many times have I talked to women in my groups and they said, oh, I wish I would be back then. Or back then, look at me in my 20s, how skinny I was. Oh, look at me in my 30s. I had it all together and I had all the time in the world to do all of this. Or I used to run 5 miles and now I can't. I don't have time. My knee's hurting, or whatever it is. So we're comparing ourselves to something from the past. Comparison can be positive. So don't get me wrong. Comparison can be a positive where you say, I can compare myself to somebody else and say, I want to be as strong as my neighbor who runs marathons. And then see if you can actually make that happen. But on the other hand, most of the comparison that I hear around my communities is usually something sad, something about loss, something that we miss, and something we try to emulate. This is a trap because if you base your motivation on comparison, you will fall in that trap and you get stuck there. So let's get rid of the comparison trap. Stop comparing yourself to something that is unattainable, that you will not be able to do, that it's just something that is unrealistic is also something to look at. And number 2 is the overwhelm trap. We're feeling overwhelmed. And here's a great story. My brother just sent me a message saying that he visited our dad recently, and my parents are divorced, and my dad is 84, and he is just not active at all. I mean, literally not at all. And he hasn't been for years. He never saw the importance of exercise. He likes drinking his beer, reading his paper, and driving to different places. So my brother visited our dad, and he said, he's really getting old. He barely gets around. His back has really problems, and he's in line to get a new pacemaker, which is happening next month. And he says, I'll talk to him, and he barely can get down the stairs, if at all. And so there's something like a caregiving service in Germany where you can apply through the government and through your insurance to get help sent to your house, which is part of healthcare in Germany. And so he asked our stepmother, my dad's married, he doesn't live alone, but she works full-time, so she's also never home. She's way younger than my dad. So my brother said to my dad, get over your pride, get over your beings. I can do all of this myself. And instead apply for this help. So that means if he applies for that help, somebody will come help him with the groceries. Somebody will help him get up and down the stairs to go to doctor's appointments, for instance. And that's all part of healthcare. But what he initially told me, he said, first off, in my mind was, okay, what do I need to do? How do I fit this in with my work? I'm also taking care of our mom. And so she needs me there too. And then he stopped himself from all the overwhelm and said, wait a minute, I can delegate this application to our stepmom. And he did that. And he said, fill in the form and keep me posted on the progress. So he's simply monitoring where they're going with the process. And so I thought this was a brilliant example for today's overwhelm trap. Trying to do it all is unsustainable and it blocks progress and also makes you feel stressed out. So instead of planning a life to overhaul everything that you can, like in my brother's case, overhaul his whole life, figure out his wife, my mom, and everything else. Focus on one meaningful goal. In his case, he just delegated. I was really proud of him. So that's the comparison trap, the overwhelm trap, and finally the perfectionism trap. Perfectionism keeps us stuck. If we don't have the perfect body, if we don't run the perfect mile, if we don't eat the perfect meal, progress matters more than perfection. You know, if you can get in a 5-minute stretch, it's a win, even if it's a short time. It feels, though, to the perfectionist, it's never enough. You say, oh, 5 minutes don't get me anywhere. Yes, it does. It keeps your motivation just a little bit going. It keeps you moving forward instead of just sitting in your perfectionism trap and not doing anything and hoping for the best. Little wins or little steps for the win. And I go deeper into breaking those traps in my upcoming book. If this resonates, join the waitlist and get notified as soon as the book is published. There might even be some bonuses. I'll leave a link in the show notes for you to check out my up-and-coming book. So how do those traps resonate with you? Are you in one of those traps? Let's get into how do we reignite your midlife motivation and getting you out of those traps and move you forward with motivation, even if it comes in waves. Okay, let's dive into the 4 ways you can reignite your motivation. And number 1 is reassessing your goals. Not everybody can thrive on a big, audacious goal. And again, we find that setting tiny, small baby steps as your goal or along the way to reach your goal is the way to go and keep consistent. But for instance, since we're not that far past January, shifting from weight loss to building strength can be a game changer. If you're thinking, okay, I have gained 5 pounds over Christmas, and now I'm doing diets, and I'm now depriving myself, and I'm now over-exercising. Instead, let's go back to our good habits that we established, or the habits that serve our goals. We're eating normal portions. We don't overeat. We don't eat extras. We don't drink extra wine. We don't eat extra cookies. And we don't have the extra serving of pie. And that in itself brings you back to normal habits that align with your goal. And now you say, you know what? For the new year, I want to build more strength. Because as we age, we need more strength. Again and again, we'll see that it's not about the cardio in our workouts, but it's the strength. That's the game changer in our lean muscle mass, our energy, and our strength overall to perform daily activities and do our sports. So pick a goal that ditch a goal, I should say, that no longer fits with your needs and that can drain your energy. Number 2 is start small. Ties in with number 1. Small wins create momentum and boost energy and confidence and motivation. Because as you slowly see the things changing that you set as your goal, and I used this yesterday in an interview. If you're setting as your goal eating protein with every meal, like we suggest at Pursue Your Spark here and also at the Pursue Your Spark Blueprint, is you missed one time. You're still on track. Out of 4 meals, you had 3 with protein, and I would like you to celebrate that. Or for instance, if you started with a 10-minute walk, and you keep walking and you keep doing this every day. And it may not sound like a lot. And it doesn't take a lot of time either. So you can build on that. And this will open the door to bigger changes. Start small. Keep going. And let me go back to the eating protein with every meal. Let me reverse that as well by saying, if you eat one protein with one meal, that's a win. That's a small start. And then you build on top of that to create momentum. And number 3 is connect with a purpose. Purpose drives motivation and keeps you inspired. Maybe you said you saw your neighbor walking around the neighborhood and you said, oh, I wonder where she's going. And you can use that and say, hey, can I come with you? Which builds on the next topic, which is the support system. But you could say, oh, she's walking. Maybe we'll walk together. Let's do something that we enjoy doing. Or like fitness can become a family activity. And if you saw my recent reel on Instagram, you saw me exercising on vacation with our adorable, I must just add that, granddaughter. And we worked out together, but we also played in the sand together. So activities or exercise activities can become something that everybody in the family can do together. And I have to just say, in the other room, my son and his wife were working out as well. So everybody was working out, but I had the pleasure of working out with my granddaughter. So connect with a purpose. Why we're doing this. And then I mentioned it already. Number 4 is build a support system. Join a group or find an accountability buddy, which is your neighbor. Your neighbor's like 8 o'clock, let's rock and roll, and we're going. Like I used to go out and coach my running group. And I had to show up and make sure that everybody else showed up as well. And that was my accountability group to get our runs in to train for our marathons. So when you surround yourself with a supportive community, and it could be just me, your coach, it makes the journey easier, but also much more effective. Somebody that looks over your shoulders, doesn't scold you, but says, come on, good job. We do this together. Makes it a lot easier. And we can solve the world's problems while we're exercising together. I also want you to check out episode 25, Boost and Increase Motivation with these 6 effective tips. I'll leave a link in the show notes. So now with all of that in mind about motivation, and now we know why we're losing motivation, and it is not our fault, and that things just change. But if we keep consistent and keep doing what we're doing, we will succeed. Now, I think it's time to reframe our perspective, and you can type it out, write it down, and hang it up somewhere when you lack motivation or feel like you are. Lack of motivation isn't failure. It's growth in disguise. If your workout feels like a chore, maybe it's time to try something new. You could be dancing, hiking, it doesn't matter. If it feels like a chore, change it. Lack of clarity is an opportunity to reset. Ask yourself, what's one small thing I can do today to feel better? It doesn't have to be banging out the workout. It doesn't have to be sucking it up going to the gym. It doesn't have to be anything that you don't like or it feels like a chore. So think about the reframing that perspective with a lack of motivation isn't failure and lack of clarity is an opportunity to reset. So you see, you're not stuck, but you're evolving. Motivation isn't about discipline. It's about understanding what drives you now and giving yourself permission to focus on just that. And speaking of focus, check out the Fasted and Fit Over 50 Jumpstart. It's a 14-video self-study course that's perfect for a first-timer interested in Pilates and intermittent fasting. It's ideal for kickstarting a healthier routine without feeling overwhelmed. I leave a link in the show notes so you can get started today. I'd love for you to join and see what's possible. Now, let me ask you, how often have you thought, is it selfish to take time for myself? Or you maybe even felt the tug of guilt saying no when you're already running on empty. I know that feeling all too well. In our next episode with our guest, we're diving into a conversation that flips the script on all of that. What if prioritizing yourself isn't selfish at all? What if it's the key to showing up as your best, most energized self? If that guilt holds you back, you won't want to miss this interview and learn meaningful steps to navigate self-care a little bit differently and not feel guilty about it.